Jessica Davis, 32, never imagined her sister's snide comment at their parents' anniversary dinner would unravel 15 years of family secrets. When her black card declined and the waiter whispered about insufficient funds, Jessica's sister laughed, "Stop pretending you're rich." But when Jessica called her bank the next morning, she discovered someone had been draining her accounts for years, someone with her social security number and mother's maiden name. Before I dive into the full story, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below. If you enjoy family drama with a side of sweet revenge, hit that like button and subscribe to join our storytelling community. Trust me, you'll want to stick around to see how karma catches up to those who betrayed Jessica's trust. Now, let's get into the shocking details. Jessica Davis had always been the responsible one. Growing up in suburban Connecticut in a middle-class family, she was the older sister who did everything right. She studied diligently, graduated top of her class, and built a successful career in investment banking by her late 20s. Her discipline and financial acumen had earned her a comfortable life in Manhattan's Upper East Side, a sleek penthouse apartment, designer wardrobe, and the coveted black credit card that symbolized her hard-earned status. In stark contrast, her younger sister Melissa had always taken the easy path. 3 years Jessica's junior, Melissa had drifted through college, changed majors 4 times, and ultimately dropped out to find herself. Their parents, Robert and Linda Davis, had always been more lenient with Melissa, making excuses for her impulsive behavior and bailing her out of financial troubles. "She's just more creative and free-spirited," they'd say, while expecting Jessica to be the mature, responsible one. This dynamic had created a palpable tension between the sisters over the years. Jessica resented how her achievements were taken for granted while Melissa's failures were coddled. Still, she maintained a cordial relationship with her family, visiting Connecticut for holidays and important events, though these gatherings often left her emotionally drained. The catalyst for the life-changing revelation occurred at their parents' 35th anniversary dinner. Jessica had flown in from New York specifically for the occasion, booking a table at Le Chateau, the most exclusive restaurant in their hometown. It was the kind of place where the waitstaff wore white gloves and the menu had no prices listed, a far cry from the casual diners the Davis family typically frequented. Mom and Dad deserve something special, Jessica had insisted when planning the evening. She had been working 80-hour weeks on a major acquisition deal, building her reputation at the prestigious firm Barrett and Solomon. The promotion to senior vice president was within reach, and although exhausted, Jessica prioritized this family celebration. The evening started pleasantly enough. Their parents arrived beaming, Linda in a new dress Jessica had sent as a gift, Robert proudly escorting his wife of 35 years. Melissa arrived 20 minutes late, as usual, with her current boyfriend, a tattooed bartender named Kyle whom she'd been dating for all of 3 weeks. Throughout the appetizers and main course, Jessica noticed subtle digs from Melissa. Comments about corporate sellouts and how some people prioritize money over relationships. Jessica brushed them off, focusing instead on making the evening special for their parents. When dessert arrived, a decadent chocolate soufflé with gold leaf that required ordering in advance, Robert raised his glass in a toast. "To my beautiful wife and our wonderful daughters. Family is everything." Jessica felt a warm glow at her father's words, a rare moment of familial harmony. That feeling was short-lived. Speaking of family, Melissa interjected, swirling her 3rd glass of expensive champagne that Jessica was paying for. "When are you going to slow down and start one of your own, Jess? Or are you too busy counting your money?" The table fell silent. Jessica's cheeks burned, but she maintained her composure. "I'm focused on my career right now," she replied evenly. "Not everyone's path has to look the same." Melissa rolled her eyes. "Right. The high-powered executive with her fancy black credit card. We get it, you're successful." "Melissa, that's enough," Linda cautioned, placing a hand on her younger daughter's arm. Robert cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Let's just enjoy our evening." Jessica excused herself to use the restroom, needing a moment alone. In the elegant powder room, She stared at her reflection. Designer dress, perfect makeup, exhausted eyes. Was Melissa right? Had she sacrificed too much for her career? She shook off the doubt. She'd worked hard for everything she had, unlike her sister who expected things to be handed to her. When Jessica returned to the table, she signaled for the check, ready to end the evening. The waiter approached discreetly with a leather folder. Jessica slipped her exclusive black card inside without looking at the total, a gesture that didn't go unnoticed by Melissa, who muttered something to Kyle. Minutes later, the waiter returned with an uncomfortable expression. He leaned down and whispered in Jessica's ear, "I'm sorry, Miss Davis, but your card has been declined. Insufficient funds." Jessica felt the blood drain from her face. That was impossible. Her credit limit was astronomical, and she meticulously managed her finances. "There must be some mistake," she said, fumbling for her phone to check her banking app. Melissa's laughter cut through the awkward silence. "Stop pretending you're rich, Jess. We all know those banking jobs aren't paying what they used to." Jessica's hands trembled as she logged into her account. What she saw made her stomach drop. Her checking account balance showed just $427.63. Her savings account, which should have contained over $200,000, read $1,892.15. "Is everything all right, dear?" her mother asked, concern etching her features. I need to make a call," Jessica stammered, rising from the table. "Dad, can you cover this? I'll pay you back tomorrow, I promise." Robert nodded, already reaching for his wallet, while Melissa smirked triumphantly. In the restaurant's quiet hallway, Jessica frantically called her bank's VIP customer service line, only to be told that after business hours, they could only freeze her accounts, but couldn't provide detailed information. The representative confirmed multiple large transfers had been made in the past month, but Jessica would need to visit a branch in person to investigate further. That sleepless night in her childhood bedroom, Jessica scrolled through weeks of transaction history, discovering a pattern of withdrawals dating back months. Someone had been systematically draining her accounts, and the bank hadn't flagged it because the transfers appeared authorized. They had her personal information, including her social security number and her mother's maiden name. As the first light of dawn broke through her curtains, Jessica made a decision. She would get to the bottom of this betrayal, no matter where it led. Little did she know, the financial theft was just the tip of the iceberg. A web of family secrets and resentments was about to unravel, forever changing her understanding of loyalty and trust. The next morning, Jessica woke before 6, her mind racing with questions and theories. She slipped out of her parents' house before anyone else was awake, leaving a note about an early meeting. In reality, she was headed to the local branch of her bank the moment it opened. The branch manager, a woman named Diane Keller, recognized Jessica immediately. As a high-value client, Jessica received personalized service, and Diane ushered her into a private office with a concerned expression. "Ms. Davis, I've pulled your account records as requested. I must say, this is highly unusual activity for someone with your financial profile." Diane slid a folder across the desk. Jessica flipped through pages of transactions, her heart sinking further with each one. Over the past 15 months, a total of $547,892.36 had been systematically withdrawn from her accounts through a combination of wire transfers, cash withdrawals, and newly opened credit lines in her name. "How's this possible?" Jessica asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I have two-factor authentication on everything." Diane clasped her hands together. "That's what's concerning. Whoever did this had access to your devices or personal information. The transactions were authorized with your credentials, security questions, and in some cases, appeared to come from your home IP address. Can you tell where the money went?" Most of it was routed through several accounts before disappearing. "We've flagged this as potential identity theft, but..." Diane hesitated. "But what?" "The pattern doesn't match typical identity theft. This wasn't a sudden drain of funds. It was calculated, small enough amounts over time to stay under fraud detection algorithms. The person knew exactly how much they could take without triggering automatic alerts." Jessica felt cold dread settling in her stomach. Someone I know did this. Leaving the bank with a temporary card and her accounts frozen, Jessica drove to the local police station to file a report. Detective Marcus Rivera took her statement, his expression growing increasingly serious as she detailed the theft. "You understand that in cases like this, family members are often involved," he asked gently after she finished. "I've considered that," Jessica admitted, though the thought made her nauseated. "My sister and I have our differences, but I can't imagine she would." Her voice trailed off. Detective Rivera nodded sympathetically. "We'll investigate all possibilities. In the meantime, I recommend you don't discuss this with family members until we've gathered more information." Back in her car, Jessica called her boss at Barrett and Solomon, explaining she needed a few more days for a family emergency. Then she called her assistant in New York, asking her to overnight Jessica's laptop and some documents from her home office. If she was going to get to the bottom of this, she needed her own resources. Jessica checked into the Marriott on the edge of town rather than returning to her parents' house. She needed space to think, to investigate without arousing suspicion. From her hotel room, she began making calls to credit bureaus, insurance companies, and her investment broker. The picture that emerged was even more disturbing than she'd imagined. Someone had opened 3 credit cards in her name. Her investment portfolio showed unauthorized trades and withdrawals. Even her health insurance had claims she never made. When she accessed her credit report, Jessica discovered a mortgage on a property in Vermont that she'd supposedly co-signed 18 months ago. As afternoon faded into evening, Jessica's phone rang repeatedly, her mother, father, and finally Melissa, all wondering where she'd disappeared to after the disastrous dinner. She sent brief texts about work emergencies, buying time while she continued her investigation. Around 7, there was a knock at her hotel room door. Jessica froze, then cautiously approached the peephole. Her father stood in the hallway, looking worried. "Dad? How did you find me?" Jessica asked, opening the door. Robert Davis looked tired, the lines around his eyes deeper than usual. "Your mother was concerned. I called around to the hotels in town." He hesitated. "May I come in?" Jessica stepped aside, her mind racing. Should she confide in her father? Could he possibly be involved? Robert sat heavily on the edge of the bed, looking around at the papers Jessica had spread across every surface. "What's going on, Jess? This doesn't look like work." After a moment of internal debate, Jessica decided to be partially honest. "Someone's been stealing from me, Dad. A lot of money. I'm trying to figure out who." Her father's face paled. "Is that why your card was declined last night? Have you gone to the police?" Yes to both questions. Jessica studied her father's reaction carefully. His shock seemed genuine, but she learned the hard way that she couldn't trust appearances. "Do they have any leads?" "How much was taken?" Robert pressed. "Over $500,000, Jessica answered, watching as her father's eyes widened in shock. "And no leads yet." Robert ran a hand through his thinning hair. "I had no idea you had that kind of money, Jess." "There's a lot about my finances that I keep private," she replied carefully. A strange expression flickered across her father's face. Was it guilt? Before Jessica could analyze it further, her phone buzzed with an email alert. It was from a private investigator she'd contacted earlier, already sending preliminary findings. "Dad, I don't mean to be rude, but I need to focus on this," Jessica said. Robert stood reluctantly. "Of course. But please come home tomorrow? Your mother is worried sick." After her father left, Jessica opened the email. The investigator had run background checks on her immediate family members and found something interesting. Melissa had incorporated a business 18 months ago, right when the first unauthorized transactions began. A boutique clothing store called Meadow Designs in Burlington, Vermont. The same city where that mysterious mortgage was located. With trembling fingers, Jessica searched for Meadow Designs Burlington and found a sleek website showcasing upscale women's clothing. The About page featured a smiling photo of Melissa, describing her as a self-made entrepreneur who built her dream from the ground up with determination and hard work. Jessica nearly laughed at the irony. Self-made, indeed, with Jessica's stolen money. But as she dug deeper, the betrayal seemed to extend beyond just her sister. The mortgage document listed two co-signers, Melissa Davis and Robert Davis. Her own father was involved. Jessica sat back, the pieces falling into place with devastating clarity. Tomorrow, she would confront them. But tonight, she would prepare. This wasn't just about recovering her money anymore, it was about exposing the truth, no matter how painful. The next morning, Jessica awoke with steely determination. Her laptop had arrived from New York, and she spent the early hours meticulously documenting everything she'd discovered. She created a secure cloud folder with all the evidence, sharing access with Detective Rivera and her attorney in Manhattan. Whatever happened next, she would be protected. At precisely 10 a.m., Jessica pulled into her parents' driveway. The modest colonial where she'd grown up looked exactly the same, white trim freshly painted, her mother's hydrangeas blooming along the walkway. How could a place so familiar now feel so foreign? Linda answered the door, relief washing over her face. Jessica, we've been so worried. She pulled her daughter into a hug that Jessica couldn't bring herself to return. Your father said you were dealing with some work crisis. Is Dad home? Jessica asked, stepping into the foyer. Yes, he's in his study. Melissa's here too. She stayed over last night. Perfect. Jessica thought grimly. Everyone in one place. Could you call them to the living room? I need to talk to all of you. Linda's brow furrowed with concern, but she nodded, disappearing down the hallway. Jessica took a seat in the armchair facing the sofa, setting her laptop on the coffee table. She pulled up the folder of evidence, ready to display it on the large smart TV her parents had mounted on the wall. Robert entered first, his expression guarded. Jessica, good to see you home. Melissa followed, wearing pajama bottoms and an oversized t-shirt, looking annoyed at being summoned. What's the emergency? Some of us were still sleeping. Sit down, Jessica said, her voice calm and controlled. I have something important to discuss. Once they were all seated, her parents on the sofa, Melissa curled in the window seat, Jessica took a deep breath and connected her laptop to the TV. 2 days ago, my black card was declined at dinner. Since then, I've discovered that someone has systematically stolen $547,892.36 from my accounts over the past 15 months. Melissa shifted uncomfortably while her parents exchanged glances. That's terrible, Linda gasped. Do they know who did it? Yes, Jessica replied evenly, pressing a key on her laptop. The mortgage document appeared on the screen, the co-signers' names highlighted in yellow. They do. Robert's face drained of color. Melissa suddenly found her fingernails fascinating. Dad, would you like to explain why you co-signed a mortgage for a property in Burlington with Melissa using my stolen funds as the down payment? The silence in the room was deafening. Linda looked between her husband and younger daughter, confusion giving way to shock. Robert, she whispered. What is she talking about? Robert Davis seemed to age 10 years before Jessica's eyes. He slumped forward, elbows on his knees, head bowed. It wasn't supposed to be like this, he said quietly. What wasn't? Jessica pressed, fighting to keep her voice steady. The part where you stole my identity? Or the part where you helped Melissa steal over $500,000 from me? You make it sound so black and white, Melissa interjected, suddenly animated. You've always had everything, Jessica. The perfect grades, the perfect job, the perfect life. Do you have any idea what it's like living in your shadow? Jessica stared at her sister incredulously. So that justifies theft? It wasn't theft. Melissa snapped. It was redistribution. You had more than you needed, and I had a dream. A dream you could have achieved honestly, through hard work like I did, Jessica countered. Your store, Linda said, realization dawning on her face. Meadow Designs. You told us you got a small business loan. She did get a loan, Robert said wearily. From Jessica's accounts. It was only supposed to be temporary. Jessica clicked to the next slide, bank statements showing the pattern of withdrawals. Temporary? For 15 months? With no intention of telling me? Robert ran a hand over his face. Melissa needed startup capital. The banks wouldn't approve her with her credit history. We were going to pay it back once the store became profitable. And when exactly would that have been? Jessica demanded. Because according to your business filings, Meadow Designs is operating at a loss. You've burned through $500,000 with nothing to show for it. Melissa jumped to her feet. That's not true. The store is gaining traction. Fashion takes time to establish. Sit down, Jessica said coldly. I'm not finished. To everyone's surprise, Melissa complied, though her face was flushed with anger. Jessica turned to her father. What I don't understand is why. Why would you do this to me? Robert couldn't meet her eyes. Your sister needed help. You've always been self-sufficient, Jessica. You've never needed anything from us. So, because I was responsible and worked hard, I deserve to be stolen from. Jessica's voice cracked slightly. Of course not, her father replied weakly. But you have to understand, Melissa came to me desperate. The store meant everything to her. It was her chance to finally succeed at something. And you didn't think to ask me? Jessica asked. If my sister needed help, if she had a legitimate business plan, did it ever occur to you that I might have willingly invested in her? A heavy silence fell over the room. Clearly, the thought had never crossed their minds. You didn't see me as a person, Jessica continued, the painful realization washing over her. You saw me as a resource. A successful daughter who had more than her share and therefore could be taken from without consequence. That's not fair, Melissa protested. You never cared about my dreams. You were always too busy with your important career to even ask what I wanted to do with my life. So you punished me by stealing from me? Jessica shook her head in disbelief. And you, she turned to her father, the man who taught me about integrity and honesty, you helped her do it. Linda, who had been silent with shock, finally spoke. I knew nothing about this, she said, her voice trembling. Robert, how could you? And Melissa? She shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. Mom was not involved, Robert confirmed. This was between Melissa and me. Well, now it's between all of us and the police, Jessica said, pulling out her phone. Detective Rivera is waiting for my call. You would send your own father and sister to jail. Melissa challenged, though fear had crept into her voice. You committed identity theft and grand larceny, Jessica replied calmly. What happens next isn't up to me, it's up to the law. Robert stood shakily. Please, Jessica. We can make this right. The store property, we can sell it. I have savings, retirement accounts. We'll pay you back every cent. Jessica looked at the man she had admired her entire life, now reduced to pleading to avoid the consequences of his actions. The betrayal cut so deep she could barely breathe. It was never about the money, she said softly. It was about trust. And that's something I'm not sure can be repaid. The living room of the Davis family home had become a battlefield of emotions. Jessica's controlled anger, Robert's desperate guilt, Melissa's defensive resentment, and Linda's shocked grief. The comfortable suburban setting now felt like a stage for a Greek tragedy, family bonds fracturing under the weight of exposed betrayal. I need to understand exactly how this happened, Jessica said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. Every detail. Now, Robert sank back onto the sofa, looking defeated. It started about 2 years ago. Melissa came to me with a business plan for her clothing boutique. She was passionate, determined. I'd never seen her so focused on anything before. I had everything mapped out, Melissa interjected. Designs, suppliers, marketing strategy. But when I approached banks for a startup loan, no one would take a chance on me because of my credit history. Which was poor because... Jessica prompted. Melissa glared. Because I made some mistakes in college. The point is, I had finally found my calling and the system was stacked against me. So instead of helping her build credit or finding legitimate investors, you decided to steal from me, Jessica said to her father. Robert winced. I tried helping her through proper channels. I co-signed loan applications, approached local business development programs. Nothing worked. That's when Dad mentioned how successful you were becoming, Melissa continued. How you had all this money sitting in accounts while I was struggling to make my dreams come true. Jessica felt physically ill. So you both decided I owed you my hard-earned money? No, Robert protested. It wasn't like that. We were desperate and I made a terrible mistake. I still had your social security information from when I helped you set up your first bank account. I knew your mother's maiden name and your birth date enough to get through basic security questions. But the two-factor authentication? The notifications to my phone. Jessica pressed. Robert looked genuinely remorseful. Remember when you upgraded your phone last year and I offered to set up the new one for you when you visited? I installed a mirroring app that forwarded your authentication codes and bank notifications to Melissa's phone. The methodical planning of it all stunned Jessica into momentary silence. This wasn't an impulsive act, it was calculated, sustained deception from the two people who should have protected her most. Linda, who had been listening with increasing horror, turned to her husband. Robert, how could you? Our daughter trusted you. I convinced myself it was just borrowing, Robert replied, his voice hollow. Melissa showed me projections that the store would be profitable within a year. We were going to pay it all back with interest before Jessica ever noticed. Except the store wasn't profitable, was it? Jessica said, pulling up the business records she'd obtained. According to these filings, Meadow Designs has been operating at a loss since day one. You've been hemorrhaging money on overpriced inventory that doesn't sell, a lease in the most expensive part of Burlington, and, she paused, scanning the document, a company car. A Mercedes, Melissa? Really? Melissa flushed. Image is everything in fashion. I needed to look successful to be successful. No, you needed to manage your finances responsibly and build a sustainable business model, Jessica countered. Instead, you've been living a fantasy funded by theft. It would have turned around. Melissa insisted. The winter collection was going to change everything. We just needed a little more time. Jessica laughed bitterly. More time and more of my money, I assume. She turned back to her father. What was the plan when you ran through all my savings? Move on to my investment accounts? My 401k. Robert's silence was damning. Oh my God, Jessica whispered, the full extent of the betrayal sinking in. You were never going to stop. Linda stood abruptly. I need to understand exactly what's happened here. Robert, how much of Jessica's money did you take? $547,892.36. Jessica answered for him. Every penny documented. And what did you spend it on? Linda demanded, turning to Melissa. Melissa squirmed under her mother's gaze. The store startup costs, inventory, marketing. And the condo in Burlington where you've been living, Jessica interrupted. And the Mercedes. And according to your credit card statements, trips to Miami, Los Angeles, and Paris for fashion research. Linda's hand flew to her mouth. You've been living like royalty with stolen money while your sister works 80-hour weeks. Don't act so shocked, Mom, Melissa spat. You've always enabled my creativity. You're the one who told me I was special and deserved beautiful things. I never taught you to steal. Linda cried. No, you just taught her she was entitled to whatever she wanted without working for it, Jessica said quietly. And Dad taught her that rules don't apply if you have a good enough excuse. A heavy silence fell over the room. The family photographs on the walls, smiling vacations, graduation ceremonies, holiday gatherings, now seemed like artifacts from a fictional past. Jessica closed her laptop and stood. I've already reported this to the police. Detective Rivera is building a case for prosecution. You can't do this, Melissa pleaded, real fear replacing her defiance. Do you know what happens to people in prison? I'm not built for that. You should have thought of that before committing felony fraud, Jessica replied coldly. Robert stood as well, his shoulders hunched with the weight of his actions. Jessica, please. There must be another way. I'll mortgage the house. I'll cash out my retirement. We'll sell the store. Whatever it takes to make this right. Jessica studied her father, the man who had taught her to ride a bike, who had cheered at her graduations, who had always seemed the moral compass of their family. How had she missed the weakness in him, the willingness to sacrifice her for Melissa's whims? I need some air, Jessica said, walking toward the front door. I'll be back in an hour. When I return, I expect a full accounting of every dollar taken and a plan for restitution. That's your only chance of avoiding prison. As Jessica reached for the doorknob, Melissa called out, You've always been so perfect, haven't you? Miss Successful with her fancy job and her black credit card. Must be nice to never struggle, to have everything come easily. Jessica turned, a lifetime of suppressed anger finally breaking through her composed exterior. Easy? You think my life has been easy? While you were dropping out of college to find yourself, I was working 3 jobs to pay for my MBA. While you were backpacking through Europe on mom and dad's dime, I was pulling all-nighters to make junior analyst. I've sacrificed relationships, sleep, and my health to build my career. Nothing was handed to me. You had opportunities one never had, Melissa insisted. We grew up in the same house, went to the same schools. The difference is, I worked for what I wanted instead of expecting it to be given to me. That's enough, both of you, Linda interjected, her face tear-stained but resolute. Jessica, take your time. We'll be here when you get back. She turned to her husband and younger daughter. And you two are going to tell me everything. Every single detail of what you've done. As Jessica walked out into the sunshine, her phone buzzed with a text from Detective Rivera, new information discovered. Call me when you can. Sitting in her car, Jessica dialed the detective's number, wondering what else could possibly be revealed. Ms. Davis, Detective Rivera's voice came through clearly. We've been tracing the money trail from your accounts. Most of it went to Meadow Designs as you suspected, but we found something else. Approximately $150,000 was transferred to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands registered to a shell company. Jessica frowned. That doesn't sound like something my sister would know how to set up. It isn't, the detective confirmed. This appears to be your father's separate operation. Based on the transactions, he's been siphoning money into this account for at least a year. The final betrayal. Even while helping Melissa steal from her, Robert had been skimming off the top for himself. Thank you, Detective, Jessica said, her heart hardening. I'll be in touch. She sat in her car, watching the house where she'd grown up, the foundation of lies beneath it now fully exposed. When she returned, there would be no more room for excuses or second chances. The time for family loyalty had passed. Hey everyone, this story is really heating up now, isn't it? I'd love to know what you think about Jessica's situation so far. Have you ever discovered someone close to you wasn't who you thought they were? Drop a like if you're eager to see how she handles this betrayal, and subscribe if you want more family drama stories delivered straight to your feed. The most shocking revelations are still to come, so stay tuned to find out what Jessica does next. Jessica drove aimlessly through her hometown, streets lined with maple trees just beginning to show hints of autumn color. Familiar landmarks triggered childhood memories that now felt tainted: the park where her father had taught her to ride a bike, the ice cream shop where they'd celebrated school achievements, the library where she'd spent countless hours building the foundation for her future success. After 30 minutes of driving, she parked at Evergreen Overlook, a small hilltop park that provided a panoramic view of the town. She needed clarity, and this had always been her thinking spot. The detective's revelation about the Cayman Islands account changed everything. If it had just been Melissa with her father reluctantly helping, Jessica might have considered a family solution: repayment plans, selling assets, keeping it out of the courts. But her father's separate embezzlement scheme suggested a level of calculation that couldn't be so easily forgiven. Jessica pulled out her phone and called the one person she knew would give her unfiltered advice: her former college roommate and best friend, Olivia Chen, now a criminal prosecutor in Boston. They did what? Olivia exclaimed after Jessica explained the situation. Jess, this is textbook identity theft and fraud. The amounts involved make it grand larceny. I know the legal implications, Jessica replied, watching a young family having a picnic nearby, their ordinary happiness a stark contrast to her family's implosion. I'm trying to figure out how to handle this without destroying what's left of my family. From where I'm sitting, they destroyed the family when they decided to steal from you, Olivia said bluntly. But I understand wanting to minimize the fallout. What would you do? Olivia sighed. Professionally speaking, I'd say press charges. The premeditation here is significant. The mirroring app on your phone alone shows considerable planning. But personally, family is complicated. After hanging up with Olivia, Jessica made 2 more calls, one to her attorney in New York and another to her financial advisor. Then she drove back to her parents' house, a strategic plan forming in her mind. When she returned, she found her parents and Melissa exactly where she'd left them, though the atmosphere had shifted. Linda sat between Robert and Melissa on the sofa, her posture rigid with disappointment. Robert's eyes were red-rimmed, whether from tears or stress was unclear. Melissa looked sullen, her earlier defiance dimmed. Jessica took her seat across from them, placing her phone on the coffee table. "I've spoken with Detective Rivera. He tells me there's a Cayman Islands account, Dad. Care to explain that?" Robert paled visibly. Linda turned to him, fresh shock on her face. "Is that true?" Linda demanded. Robert's shoulders slumped further. "I needed a safety net," he mumbled. "For retirement." "My retirement, apparently," Jessica corrected. "The detective says it contains roughly $150,000 of my money." "Robert," Linda exclaimed. "You told me we were set for retirement with your pension and our savings." "We were managing, but it wasn't enough for the lifestyle I wanted to provide for you," Robert said weakly. After helping Melissa access Jessica's accounts, it seemed convenient to secure our future too. Jessica shook her head in disbelief. "So this was never just about helping Melissa. You saw an opportunity to enrich yourself and took it." "I was going to pay it back," Robert insisted, the same empty promise he'd made about Melissa's stolen funds. "With what money, Dad?" "Your teacher's pension." Jessica's father had been a high school history teacher for 30 years, a profession she'd always respected for its service rather than its financial rewards. Robert had no answer. "Here's what's going to happen," Jessica said, activating a recording app on her phone. "I need full confessions from both of you, detailing exactly what you took and how you took it." "Why should we?" Melissa challenged, though her voice lacked conviction. "Because I'm offering you one chance to avoid prison," Jessica replied evenly. "Detective Rivera has enough evidence to charge both of you with multiple felonies. You're looking at 7 to 10 years if convicted." The color drained from Melissa's face. Robert looked physically ill. "This recording will serve as your formal confession," Jessica continued. "In exchange, I'm prepared to work with the detective on an alternative to criminal prosecution." Linda looked between her husband and daughters, tears streaming down her face. "Please, both of you. Tell the truth now." Robert went first, his voice shaking as he detailed how he had used Jessica's personal information to access her accounts, how he installed the mirroring app on her phone, and how he had systematically transferred funds to both Meadow Designs and his Cayman account. Melissa followed, admitting to spending the stolen money on the store, luxury items, and international trips while misrepresenting the business's performance to her father to keep the money flowing. When they finished, Jessica stopped the recording and sent it to both her attorney and Detective Rivera. "I've just sent this to my lawyer and the police. Now, here are my terms." She pulled out a document her attorney had emailed her. "This is a legally binding restitution agreement. You will return every cent stolen from me with interest. The Cayman account will be transferred to my name immediately. The store property will be sold and all business assets liquidated." "But my store," Melissa began. "Is built on stolen money," Jessica interrupted. "You have no right to it." "What about criminal charges?" Robert asked hoarsely. "That depends on your compliance," Jessica answered. "If you fulfill the terms of this agreement completely and promptly, I'll recommend to the DA that they pursue civil penalties rather than criminal charges." "We'll sign," Robert said immediately. "Whatever you want, Jessica." "I'm not finished," Jessica continued. "Dad, you will retire earlier than planned and transfer the house into Mom's name only. Melissa, you will enter a financial counseling program and find legitimate employment." Melissa started to protest, but Linda silenced her with a look. "And finally," Jessica said, her voice catching slightly, "I will be taking a step back from this family. I need time and distance to process this betrayal. Whether I ever return to family gatherings or holidays will depend on your actions moving forward, not just in repaying the money, but in showing genuine remorse and change." Linda began to sob quietly. "Jessica, please." "I'm sorry, Mom. I know this hurts you when you're innocent in all this, but I need to protect myself. I've learned that blood doesn't guarantee loyalty." As they signed the documents, The weight of the betrayal hung heavy in the room. Jessica knew that while she might recover her money, the trust she'd lost could never be fully restored. 3 months passed since the confrontation at the Davis family home. Jessica had returned to New York, immersing herself in work and the process of rebuilding her financial security. The penthouse that had once represented her success now felt tainted, and she'd begun looking at properties in a different neighborhood, a fresh start. Her phone buzzed with a text from Detective Rivera. "Thought you'd want to know, liquidation of Meadow Designs complete. Funds being transferred to restitution account today." Jessica sent a brief thank you response. The detective had been invaluable throughout this process, working with the district attorney to honor Jessica's wishes for civil rather than criminal penalties, provided her father and sister complied with all terms. So far, they had. The Cayman Islands account had been transferred to Jessica's name within a week of the confrontation. The store property sold quickly, though at a loss from what Melissa had paid for it. Robert had announced his early retirement from teaching, effective immediately, citing health concerns. The family home was now solely in Linda's name. The financial recovery was proceeding as planned. The emotional recovery was proving more complicated. Jessica's phone rang, her mother's number. They spoke weekly now, brief, careful conversations that skirted around the family fracture. Jessica answered, setting aside the contract she'd been reviewing. "Hi, Mom." "Jessica, dear. How are you?" Linda's voice carried a perpetual sadness these days. "Busy with work. The Morrison acquisition is moving forward." Jessica kept her tone light, professional. "That's good." A pause. "Your father had his first therapy session yesterday." Jessica hadn't asked for this information, but Linda provided these updates anyway, perhaps hoping they would soften her daughter's heart. "I hope it's helpful for him," Jessica replied neutrally. "He's really trying, Jess. The therapist is helping him understand his enabling patterns with Melissa and his own issues with financial insecurity. Understanding why he committed fraud doesn't undo it, Mom." Linda sighed. "I know that. I miss you. Thanksgiving is next month, and the thought of not having you here." "I can't, Mom." "Not yet." Jessica's throat tightened. Despite everything, she missed her mother too. "I understand." Another pause. "Melissa has been working at the community center. Volunteer work at first, but they've offered her a part-time position now." Jessica hadn't expected that. "Doing what?" "Teaching art classes to kids. She's actually quite good with them. She's still attending the financial counseling sessions too." Jessica didn't know how to feel about this information. Part of her was glad Melissa was making positive changes, but another part remained deeply skeptical. "That's good to hear." After ending the call with her mother, Jessica stood at her window, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. The city lights blurred as unexpected tears filled her eyes. She missed the family she thought she had, the supportive father, the mother who mediated disputes, even the sister who challenged her. But those people had never truly existed. Her intercom buzzed, the doorman announcing a visitor. Jessica wiped her eyes, confused. She wasn't expecting anyone. "Miss Davis, there's a Miss Chin here to see you." Olivia. Her friend must have decided to make a surprise visit from Boston. "Send her up, please." Minutes later, Jessica opened her door to find not only Olivia, but 3 other friends from business school, all carrying takeout bags and bottles of wine. "Intervention time," Olivia announced, pushing past Jessica into the apartment. "You've been working too much and processing too little." For the first time in months, Jessica found herself laughing genuinely as her friends set up an impromptu dinner party in her living room. They didn't mention the family situation unless she brought it up, instead filling her in on their own lives, office gossip, and dating disasters. As they were opening the second bottle of wine, Olivia pulled Jessica aside. "How are you really doing with everything?" Jessica considered the question seriously. "I'm angry. I'm hurt. Some days I miss them so much it's physical pain, and other days I never want to see them again." Olivia nodded. All completely normal responses to betrayal. "The hardest part is knowing that while I can get my money back, I can never get back my trust in them." Every childhood memory is now filtered through the knowledge that my father was capable of stealing from me, that my sister resented me enough to justify taking what I worked for. Family relationships can be rebuilt, Olivia said carefully. Not the same as before, but something new with stronger boundaries. I'm not ready for that. You don't have to be. Not now, maybe not ever. Olivia squeezed her friend's arm. Just don't let their betrayal define your ability to trust others. Later that night, after her friends had left, Jessica received an email from her financial advisor confirming that the restitution account now held nearly $400,000 of the stolen funds. Progress, but still a significant shortfall from the full amount. Attached to the email was a letter from her father. Jessica's finger hovered over the delete button, but curiosity won out. She opened it. Jessica, it began. Words cannot express the depth of my shame and regret. I've spent my life teaching young people about character and integrity while failing those principles with my own daughter. There is no excuse for what I did. I betrayed not only your trust, but everything I claimed to stand for. I've enclosed the deed to my restored 1967 Mustang. I know it doesn't come close to covering what I still owe you financially, but it's the most valuable thing I personally own. More importantly, I want you to know I'm getting help to understand why I did what I did. The therapist is helping me see how I've always favored Melissa, making excuses for her while holding you to higher standards because you seemed so capable. I don't expect forgiveness. I only hope that someday, you might be open to hearing how deeply sorry I am in person. With profound regret and love always, Dad. Jessica closed the email without responding. The car was worth maybe $45,000, a token gesture toward the remaining debt. But her father's acknowledgement of his favoritism struck a deeper chord. For the first time, he recognized the unfair dynamic that had shaped her childhood. Was it enough? No. But it was something. Jessica opened her laptop and began drafting an email to Detective Rivera. She had a new proposal regarding her family's restitution plan, one that might provide a path forward, however tentative. 1 year later, Jessica stood outside a modest storefront in downtown Hartford, Connecticut. The sign above the door read Second Chances, Community Career Center. Taking a deep breath, she pushed open the door and stepped inside. The reception area was bright and welcoming, with motivational posters and job listings covering the walls. A young man at the front desk looked up with a smile. Welcome to Second Chances. How can we help you today? I'm here to see the director, Jessica replied. Do you have an appointment with Ms. Davis? Jessica smiled slightly at the formality. She's expecting me. The receptionist led Jessica down a hallway to an office at the back. Through the glass door, Jessica could see Melissa sitting at a desk, focused intently on her computer screen. She looked different, her previously highlighted hair now its natural brown, her outfit simple and professional rather than trendy and expensive. The receptionist knocked, and Melissa looked up. For a moment, the sisters stared at each other through the glass. Then Melissa stood quickly and opened the door. Jessica, you came. Her voice held disbelief and tentative hope. I said I would. Jessica entered the office, taking in the modest but functional space. The center looks good. It's making a real difference, Melissa said, gesturing for Jessica to sit. We've helped over 50 people find employment in the past 6 months. Mostly former addicts, ex-offenders, and people who just need a second chance. People like Melissa herself, Jessica thought, but didn't say. After the confrontation, Jessica had modified her restitution demands. Rather than requiring Melissa to simply find a job, Jessica had proposed a more meaningful consequence. Melissa would use her organizational skills and business knowledge to establish a nonprofit career center for disadvantaged individuals. Jessica would fund the startup costs from the recovered money, and her financial team would oversee the center's finances with strict transparency requirements. Your quarterly report shows you're slightly under budget, Jessica noted, having reviewed the documents before this visit. We're being careful with resources, Melissa replied. Every dollar saved means we can help more clients. It was such a stark contrast to the woman who had blown hundreds of thousands on luxury items just a year ago that Jessica almost couldn't reconcile the two versions of her sister. Mom says you're dating someone new, Jessica said, changing the subject. Melissa nodded. David. He runs the addiction counseling program next door. She smiled slightly, very different from my usual type. Stable. Honest. Good. An awkward silence fell between them. There was so much unspoken history, so much hurt still simmering beneath the surface. Melissa finally broke the silence. I know this center doesn't make up for what I did to you. Nothing could. But I want you to know that I think about it every day, not just the money, but the betrayal. How I let jealousy and entitlement poison me. Jessica studied her sister's face, looking for signs of the manipulation she'd become wary of. Instead, she saw genuine remorse. The financial counselor you recommended helped me understand my toxic relationship with money, Melissa continued. I always thought I deserved the same lifestyle you had, without understanding the work you put in to achieve it. And Dad? Jessica asked. How is he? Still seeing his therapist. He's volunteering at the high school's history club since he can't teach anymore. The ethics violation on his record prevents that. Melissa hesitated. He asks about you every time we talk. Jessica nodded, but didn't respond directly. Her relationship with her father remained the most complicated aspect of the family fracture. His betrayal had cut the deepest. And you? Melissa asked carefully. Mom mentioned you moved to a new apartment. Yes, in Tribeca. I needed a fresh start. Jessica didn't add that she'd been promoted to senior vice president at Barrett and Solomon, or that she was dating someone new herself, a corporate attorney who knew her full story and still looked at her with admiration rather than pity. The restitution account reached full repayment last month, Jessica noted. Between the liquidated store assets, the Cayman Islands account, her father's pension advances, and the sale of family possessions, they had finally returned the full $547,892.36, plus interest. I know. Dad sold his baseball card collection to cover the final amount, Melissa said quietly. The one Grandpa left him. Jessica hadn't known that. Their grandfather's vintage baseball card collection had been her father's prized possession. Jessica, Melissa said, leaning forward, I know we can never go back to how things were. But I'm hoping someday we might build something new. Not as the people we were, but as the people we're becoming. Jessica considered her sister's words. The anger that had sustained her through the past year had gradually transformed into something more complicated, a melancholy acceptance that families were imperfect, that people could both love you and hurt you profoundly. I'm not ready to forget, Jessica said finally. But I think I'm ready to start moving forward. Relief washed over Melissa's face. That's more than I deserve. Yes, it is, Jessica agreed, but there was no malice in her tone. I'm having dinner with Mom next weekend. Maybe you could join us. It was a small step, but a significant one. As Jessica left the career center, she felt a weight lifting that she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. The betrayal would always be part of their family history, but perhaps it didn't have to define their entire future. That evening, Jessica sat in her new apartment, looking out at the Hudson River as the sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Thank you for seeing Melissa today. It meant everything to her. Love you. Jessica typed a reply. Baby steps, Mom. Love you too. Her father had been right about one thing, family was everything. But Jessica had learned an essential truth through this painful journey. Real family was built on respect, honesty, and mutual support, not just shared DNA. Some relationships could be repaired after betrayal, while others needed to be redefined with clear boundaries. The most important thing was protecting your own worth and trusting your instincts about who deserved a place in your life. As she watched the last light fade from the sky, Jessica felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced since that fateful dinner when her card declined. The money had been returned, justice had been served, and now, healing could begin on her terms. Hey everyone, wow, what a journey this has been. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how Jessica handled everything. Have you ever had to forgive someone who deeply betrayed your trust? Or have you had to set boundaries with family members who crossed the line? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, Please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life drama and lessons learned the hard way. Don't forget to share this video with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to stand up for yourself, even against family. Thank you so much for watching my story about family karma and justice served. Until next time, remember that you deserve respect and honesty from everyone in your life, especially those closest to you.